أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. All praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We seek refuge in Him from all the evil created within us, within around us, and we seek refuge with Him. We bear witness to no God worthy of worship except Allah, and Muhammad is His messenger. Whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, there's no one who can misguide him. Whoever is misguided, no one can guide him. Inshallah, today I'll be addressing some of the questions that were sent to us, to a group of new Muslims, by someone. I'm not going to mention the name anymore. Inshallah, this is going to be more an educational thing. I'm going to try to help the brother out and to answer some of these questions, with good intention, inshallah. Kind of started off on the wrong foot, and I want to, make a short statement about that because you have to understand, that our deen is more beloved to us than our own family, than our own parents, and anything that exists. And Islam is, for us, the ultimate. We love Allah and His Messenger more than we love ourselves and everything in this world. So when someone comes and attacks it, sometimes you have to stand up and, tell them that that's not the way, and you got to be stern sometimes. So inshallah, we've seen some good interaction, positive things from yourself, and we would like to answer now properly and, just in terms of like an educational setting and answer questions. As for, the only problems that I have still with is the way questions are asked. And I've told this to people before. There's no such thing as a stupid question. There's no such thing as a wrong question. There's stupid answers, wrong answers, but there's no such thing as a bad question. But the way questions are asked, that is the problem. For example, if someone were to ask, I've dealt with this, for a long time. If someone wants to ask about polygamy, for example, right? A proper question would be, hence, how come Islam allows polygamy? Or why does Islam allow polygamy? Or what is Islam allowed to marry more than one wife? A wrong question which would upset a Muslim would be, example, why is Islam so sexually perverted to have allowed you to have sex with more than one woman, right? So the projection of the question is stated wrong, and that would insult someone, right? Someone who at least knows the value of marriage in Islam and knows the importance of marriage in Islam and the ethics and morals that are pushed through that. And if someone comes and brings in some kind of a sexually perverted, type of view and projection, that would upset a Muslim. So I think that's why we kind of got upset a bit at the beginning. So I have no problem going on with this for whatever time you want, and sitting down with you or with anyone and speaking about these things, but just have some respect in the way you ask the questions. That's all I say. Going on to a second point, one very interesting story that I heard from one of my teachers is, and this, just to kind of give the frame of mind of people who, many people say they seek the truth or they want to know this or that, but they're so set up in their mind that, nothing will change their understanding. Nothing will change their mind. It's engraved in stone, and, there's no strong enough dynamite to blow up that stone. There was a woman who finished Harvard Medical School, and this is one of my teachers told me the story, and basically she went to start practicing in hospital, and she was very smart. So all the other doctors were like, wow, this is a smart cookie, right? So she got bored after some time because she was not being engaged enough. So she said, give me some tough case. I'm bored. What is this piece of cake? So they said, okay, there's a guy who thinks he's dead. He's alive, but he thinks he's dead. He keeps saying I'm dead. So, deal with this guy. Try to see if you can heal him. So after some time, she, went to him and, how are you? I'm dead, And again, how are you, sir? And, after a few days or the next day, I'm dead as, wood or whatever. So, she was just, after like 3-4 months, she's like, I'm going to give up. I can't do it anymore. And she consulted with one of her, tutors from her old school, and they came up with a plan. So she went back the next day, and she said, okay, Mr. So-and-so, let me ask you a question. How are you today? He said, I'm dead as always. I'm dead. So she said, let me ask you another question. Do dead people bleed? He said, he thought about it. He said, no, they don't. They must not bleed because they don't. She said, why not? She said, well, he said, because they obviously don't have blood flowing really. You know, it gets dried after some time, and so on and so forth. It has integrated the blood cells. So she said, exactly. Are you sure of that? He said, yes. He said, so she took his hand, she stabbed it with a little pin, and blood came out of it. So he looked at it. He was like, wow. He looked at it. He's like, wow. Dead people do bleed. Right? So basically, instead of, changing he said, dead people do bleed, I'll be damned, dead people do bleed, he said. So, some people are just stuck in their mind. They claim that they want this. They set up a certain, criteria. And when that criteria is presented to them and refutes their arguments, they still don't want to change. And I've dealt with many people. So, inshallah, we hope that, everyone's sincere here, seeking for the truth. I'm making this video to respond to the questions, to educate some of the people who might have had, some, not understand some of these things. And now this video is going to be a bit long. And I hope, I apologize for that. I know many people tell me, make sure videos. Just these issues cannot be touched. Whoever wants to really know and wants to really sit down and listen and to understand, then take a seat, take some popcorn and something to drink, because we're gonna go probably for about 45 minutes. If you're not ready to do that, that's your big loss, because now after these emails and after these questions, especially the new Muslims should really understand that to know your deen is very important. Especially that today, what we live in, this is not abnormal. People have been doing this. I've been doing this thing, dealing with things like this for quite a few years now. And everywhere, any kind of discussion or thing, people bring up some of these same issues over and over and over again. So it's very crucial and fundamental for us to understand these things and to be able to engage people and respond to them properly and do in a proper manner, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Qabud, we should only speak. We should engage with the people of the book or whoever only with the best of manner, and invite people with the best of manner. So again, if you're ready for this, we're going to go up to like 40 minutes, so please pay attention. I'm going to try my best to explain these things. I'm not a scholar. I'm not so a scholar would take care of this in 20 minutes. I'm not a scholar. I had to go do some readings, get some of my books out here, and I'm going to try to keep moving up and down, pull out some different screens on my computer, and I'm going to go through. I printed out the questions, and I'll go through them, inshallah, hopefully one by one. So let's get into it again. So basically the first question was, the first argument was that Prophet Muhammad did not treat his wives equally. And basically the argument is that based on the surah and it's based on polygamy, right? That how can you marry 4 women, especially keeping in mind that the verse in the Quran says in Surah Nisa, which is the chapter of the women dedicated to legislations and laws and things, ethics and morals about women. It says, and if you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphan girls, it talks about orphan though here, right? Because the verse before says, O mankind, fear your Lord who created you from one soul and created from it its mate and dispersed from both of them many men and women, and fear Allah though whom you ask one another, and the wombs, basically establish the ties of the wombs, be good to your parents and so on. Indeed Allah is ever a watcher over you. And give the orphans their properties, and do not substitute the defective, okay, for the good. So don't take from them and give them your bad, and do not consume their properties into your own. Indeed this is a great sin. And if you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphan girls, then marry of those that please you of other women, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear they will not deal justly with them, then marry one, or those whom your right hand possess. That is more suitable, that you may incline to justice or not incline to injustice. So this really talks about, and I want to restate the verse. It says marry 1, 2, or 3 or 4, marry women 2, 3 or 4. But if you fear they will not be just, then marry only one, or of those whom your right hand possess. And we'll talk about that before. So the question is that how can you treat the women equally? It's not going to happen. So basically the default in Islam is that you marry one woman, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He created from you your wives. Okay, it's very important that the concept of marriage in Islam is understood. And I'm going to quote here in Surah Rum when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this marriage. And He says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ. Okay, He says from His signs. It's something very important when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says from His signs. Okay, this is right now is trying to get our attention to prove to us that this is the truth, for us to reflect among us. And from His signs that He created from you, from yourselves, mates that you may find tranquility in them. And He placed between you affection, love, and mercy. Indeed, these are the signs for people who give thought. It even asks us to ponder over this. What is this statement? He says, from you He created, from Adam He created women. And in another place He says that women and men, they're kind of like clothing for each other. What is this is from the Quran. What is the definition of clothing? It protects you from the sun, from cold. It comforts you, right? So it's such a strong bond that is something very important. It's very emphasized. But in Surah Rum it says that He created from you, from yourself, your spouses, and then He put love, mercy, tranquility in between you. He says this is from the signs that people give thought. They should think about is how important is marriage. Now going back to the issue of marrying 2, 3, 4, and if not, marry one, right? So if a person feels that, hey, I will not be able to keep this justice, right? What is this justice referring to, right? Because in your, say, you bring the hadith, Sahih Bukhari, in volume 5, it says, narrated Hisham's father, when Allah's apostle was in fatal illness, he started visiting his wives and saying, where will I be tomorrow? He was anxious to be in Aisha's home. Aisha said, so when is it my day? The Prophet became silent, no longer asked questions. Okay, basically what happened is the Prophet loved Aisha the most. Okay, so you have to keep in mind that the verse in the Quran, okay, does not say anything. It says only about how you distribute your time, how you distribute your dealings and your property to your wives, right? It says, but if you fear you not deal justly with them, then marry only one. Okay, so it talks about dealing justice. Okay, just dealings. It doesn't say if you love one more than the other. So basically, let's analyze what you said. Let's go step by step, slowly, and answer this question properly. First of all, he was in his fatal illness, so he was sick. Okay, he was not anymore doing the rounds that he would do all the time. And even when he was the night of one of his wives, he would go and visit all his wives during the same day, go speak to them, be nice to them, be kindly. It's narrated in the hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, and all these the big hadith authentic sources, that even when he was traveling, he used to take straws and kind of pull, based on probability, that who will actually accompany him, so he would be fair. So basically what he does, though, in the other hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, when he was about to die, he was asking, it says that the Prophet ﷺ would ask permission from his wives, that he says, where should I be tomorrow, hoping that it would be the turn of Aisha. And his wife permitted him to stay where he wanted, because he was sick. And not just because of that, we have to analyze this, because they loved what he loved, because they cared for what he cared, and they wanted the best for him. These women did not say, oh, we can't wait for him to die. Instead, they cried, they stayed in their house even after he died. They didn't remarry after he died. They were so committed to him, and they loved him so much that all the wives of the Prophet loved him for his character and for his kindness. So these are not perverted, that he wanted to be just with one and he wasn't, that he wasn't equal to them, that he asked them their permission. He was anxious to be with Aisha. Why? Because he was asked one time, the Prophet was asked by one of the Sahabas, he said, who you love the most? In this hadith and from the seerah, he said Aisha, and they said, then the Sahaba was actually hoping that it would be him, right? Because he put him in charge of an army. Then he said, and who else? Then he said, her father. Then he said, who else? Then he said, Omar and so on. He gave, pretty much he gave up because he knew that he was gonna be up the line, right? That he loved some people the most before him, right? So he was very, very keen to observe fairness, and he never changed, okay, according to these conditions. He was very, when he traveled, as I said, when he would give him money, whatever he could do, he would do his best to be in the most of equality. And it's only when he got sick this hadith that you're quoting here. And I think this is very unjust to go to a person's sickness and to, pick on that, because he was sick and he even then was waiting. Now, he could have said, I'm going to go with Aisha because I love her the most. I'm going to stay with her. No, even then, he asked permission. This is from the hadith that you yourself quoting. Okay? He was anxious to be in her house, but he was trying to be equal and he asked for permission. Then, basically, let me here see. In another narration, the Prophet he said that, "O Allah, I have done as much as I can with regard." For this from Tafsir Ibn Kathir, I have done as much as I can with regards to what is under my control. So do not blame me for which is not under my control. He was talking about his love, right? This is recorded by all the 4 Sunan compilers, Bukhari, Muslim, and the other 2 big hadith. So he said, you can hold me accountable. I've done as much as I can to give them money, give them housing, give them time, and this and that. But that's what's under my control. That is what is that I can deal with fairly with, right? But I cannot deal fairly with my love. And I want to quote here the same surah that you brought forward in Surah Nisa, verse 129. Okay, it says, "And you will never be able to be equals in feelings between your wives, even you should strive to do so. So do not incline completely towards one and leave another hanging. And if you amend affairs and fear Allah, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful." It says you will not be able to always be equal. It says, in terms of your feeling. It says that. So if you put this verse together and the verse in the same surah, verse 3, then you understand what it means. That's what I want to stress again to all the Muslims and to yourself and people who have questions. You have to have full knowledge of Islam. You can't take a verse here and a verse here and don't even understand the structure of the Quran and how it is, and take it as a whole. Then you say, oh, look what it says. I mean, you can do this, to anything in any book and any structure, anything, and you can misquote it, and then you wouldn't give it justice. So in terms of wealth, time, and so on, full fairness. In terms of love and feelings, that's something out of control, right? And the Quran and the Hadith affirm those statements. And he says the next thing is the only quality, he says, I find is how Muhammad had sexual relations with his wife. Again, emphasizing, from a very, kind of a bad question again, with the bad, formulation. It says that the Prophet, Ibn Qatada, this is from Bukhari, the Prophet used to visit all his wives in one round during the day and night, and then when they were 11 in number. And I asked Anas, had the Prophet the strength for it? Anas replied, we used to say that the Prophet had given the strength of 30 men. Okay? He did used to visit his wives. That's I just said. Who said it's about sex? And again, we're thinking about sex. There's a reference there that says that he had the strength to do it. Yes, he had the strength to do it. So, why do we have to go into... if it is about sex, why do we have to go into people's sexual lives, right? Obviously, they're his wives. Obviously, if you would visit them, again, going back to your fairness, right? You talked about fairness. If he did have sex with one wife, obviously it would be fair to have with the other ones, right? So this kind of refutes, your statement that you're talking. And we're talking about here, not the sex that we see today and the pornographical, ideas and, images that are being portrayed in our societies. We're talking about genuine love that the Prophet ﷺ had for his wife, genuine love that the wives of the Prophet ﷺ had for him. We're not talking about, our own projections of this perverted society that we live in are reflected here in how we state our questions, right? So we have to be careful, again, to be sincere and not just be like, oh, sex this, sex that, Muhammad, So basically, yes, he did visit his wives. If he did have sex, that's great, that's fair, to treat them all equally, as you said. You just said the one above that he didn't. So this kind of refutes you. And, we have to understand it was genuine love, and they were his wives. This is not just, a person who just goes and does whatever, And we're humans, right? Islam is a deen of fitrah, of the, everyone has desires. And obviously his wives have desires, right? So he has to fulfill their desires too. He can't just, like, I don't want to sleep with you girls, whatever. No, he has to, this is what a husband and a wife do. They sleep together. So we have to be, very, again, going back to sincerity and, formulating proper questions. So the times that he spent equal, I think, is the best equality that you could ever see, the best husband that we could ever see in this life, and anyone was the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the greatest thinkers of the time, historians, Michael Hart, other historians, Muhammad Gandhi, who had talked about it, the Pope himself, the old Pope, and many other people have looked, at Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, have said, amazing things about it, and they saw the injustice that people have done to him by attacking him in, such weird and cowardly ways. So we're gonna keep going on again, trying to educate and trying to answer questions. Going to the next hadith, that he says that there was jealousy. There's at least 5 narration which shows that there was jealousy among Muhammad's wife, and in parentheses says probably mostly because of Muhammad's polygamous lifestyle. Of course, there's jealousy amongst women and amongst men, and there's jealousy, and this is a human nature. Again, going back to that, right? Why did Hagar have, Sarah have jealousy over Hagar, Ibrahim's wife, right? He was polygamous. He had 2 wives. And so on, and she was jealous, right? And jealousy is just a human nature. Of course, they would be jealous. There's no doubt, I would say, about that. So you can't just say that, what kind of jealous. But I mean, we can't say that because they're jealous, there's some problem. They're just expressing their human emotion, and it's not necessary. So yes, if it would be from their his lifestyle, but this was something that was normal for a person at the time. People today don't marry. We have to understand that the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ had a purpose. The marriages that happened, and that's why the default, as I said, in marriage is one woman. Allah created Adam and he created Eve for him. He didn't create 4 wives, okay? And if you look throughout history, there was times when people were polygamous out of the command of God, and there was times they were monogamous. Okay, so we have to be careful again, not to focus on this is not a default. Okay, this is the exceptions and times when times are in need. It is allowed, no doubt. Okay, no doubt, but it's not that hey, let's just go and I feel like having sex and marrying this and the because the value, as you talked about in another question, what's the concept of a holy marriage. It is holy because Allah ordered it. Because marriage implies not just love and sex and so on and so forth. It implies commitment. It implies, again, taking care of, spending the time and being equal and so on and so forth. Administering love and taking care of children, as Prophet Muhammad did in the best of manners. If any unbiased person reads the biography of the Prophet will be convinced of this. The most prominent thinkers of the world were convinced in this and wrote only good things about in this case, and only the most those biased people were the ones who attacked the Prophet. So yes, they were jealous, and yes, they did back each other up against the Prophet, and he was mad sometimes, and he secluded himself 1 month away from it, right? 1 month. If he was such a sexual, how come he stayed so long away from them? And times he would travel and leave them, and so many things. How come do you think that this so perverted man would be able to do this if he was so after sex, right? So he secluded himself from them because he was upset because they're asking him for money and this and that, and he said, if you want this from money and this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, he said, the messenger can give you these provisions if you want, if you desire this world, but if you want Allah and his messenger, then the hereafter is better for you. Be his wives in paradise. You'll have all the blessings and everything you need in paradise. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, you said, verse 6, surah 66, verse 5. So if we do go to that surah and we understand what it is, it just talks about the rights of divorce, but he did not divorce any of them. It just talks about, it gives us a set of rules for life if these things were to happen. That's why things happen in the Prophet ﷺ's life. Okay, this is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom, who controls things and decrees things, for us to learn, and based on those events, verses were revealed. So verse 5 in this says, that is the command of Allah which he has sent down to you, and whoever fears Allah, he will remove from him his misdeeds and make for him his reward. Okay, because it talks about being good to them, paying them, don't kick them out of their house, support them if you were to divorce them. But he didn't divorce them. Okay, and that's not just for the Prophet, this is for all of the men to know and to understand how to do it. okay, if it has happened. So, you know, what happens in society today, people go in court, they start fighting over it, they start swearing at it after, you know, they used to cuddle and love each other and, you know, be in the same bed and so on and so forth and have kids. Then they go in court and they call each other weird names and bad things, and, you know, and do bad things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you have to be fair to them, okay? And He will provide from Him from where He does not expect, He says. And whoever relies upon Allah, then He is sufficient for him. And those who no longer are in the ministration from the women, after, if you want to divorce them, there's an iddah period of 3 months of wait. And those who are parent, if they're pregnant, then you have to wait till they give birth. And He says, this is the command of Allah, okay? And He says, lodge them, hold, like keep them in their house. Don't throw them out. Don't, you know, harm them in order that you may oppress them. Verse 6 says, and if they should be pregnant, then spend on them until they give birth. And if they breastfeed for you, then still spend on them. Okay, so I mean, subhanAllah, you know, it says, let a man of wealth spend from his wealth, and he whose provision is restricted, let him spend from what Allah has given him. Still, again, emphasizing spending, taking care of these wives, comparing to today's society. Going back to court. Oh, woman, you did this, I want half of your money, I want all your money, the woman takes this, I want the house. They argue, they never talk to each other, this and that. The Quran says spend on them. If you separate on an amicable manner, on a proper manner. Look at the mercy of that. So again, we take everything, we look and analyze. We have to know, we have to have full knowledge of this book. We have to have full knowledge of the word of Allah, the hadith and everything, the fiqh and so on and so forth, for us to go and make, you know, certain things. So, subhanAllah, you know, and it's amazing because just 3 hadiths down or 2 hadiths down, it says, in the same book they quoted, just, you know, if you were to read a very beautiful hadith, Allah, the Prophet said, may I tell you, the people of paradise, every weak and poor, obscure person whom the people look down upon, but his oath is fulfilled by Allah when he takes an oath to do something. Those are the people from paradise, He says. And I may inform you, the people of hellfire, they are those violent, arrogant, and stubborn people. Look at that. So people of paradise, they fulfill their oath. They're pure, they're obscure, that people look down on them. But the people, they fulfill their oaths with Allah. So look, it's teaching us to be truthful. It's teaching us that, you know, even the poor, the weak, they will, you know, people look down upon them, Allah will take care of them as long as they fulfill their oath with Allah. They believe in. And the people of hellfire, they're violent, they're ignorant, they lie, they're stubborn. These are the bad people. Look what a beautiful, you know, what Islam really teaches. And I'm going to go towards the end, that's what I'm going to end with what does Islam really teach, you know, to know, because we start picking things in here and there and confusing people and cutting, pasting, and take only one thing. And Islam is so much larger than that. I mean, let me ask you, you know, more of a personal question for all of you who have, you know, who have experienced Islam. You've met Muslims before. You understand how Muslims are. You met with them. Some people are not really practicing, and you know, they're not the best in Islam. But subhanAllah, if you live among Muslims and you with proper practicing Muslim, then you understand what kind of people are. Their morals and ethics, their sincerity and truth, and how they, you know, they wouldn't cheat you for nothing, right? That's how Islam spread in Indonesia. It was based on the fact that people's proper actions, okay, not jihad, not this, not that. It was the way that people acted. So we have to, you know, understand. And I'm going to go into some of the teachings of Islam. Keep going, inshallah. We talked about that. We talked about the jealousy. He says, you know, an interesting question. Says, if you think that Islam gave women rights, then why is it that Khadija, the very first wife of Muhammad, was a wealthy and successful businesswoman? But after Muhammad, there are no women left unveiled, and certainly no women owning businesses and being considered successful in this. They married a sheikh who has only one other wife. I mean, where does that come from? You know, it's kind of weird. But let's address it again from an educational point of view. First of all, there's, as I quoted to you right before, today, okay, during this time, so many women throughout, even Saudi Arabia, you're attacking. Some of the wealthiest women live there, right? Just look at, for example, the issue of dowry, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, give them their dowry when you marry. Okay? So, based on the person's. So if let's say a woman marries a prince from Saudi Arabia, he gives her sometimes the dowry is in the millions, okay, and that's a money he cannot touch. It's her money, her account. She can buy property with that. This is what Islam teaches. Look in the book of Fuqaha. The Fuqaha have all talked about it. There's ijma, consensus. There's no such thing, proof from the Quran, Hadith, everything. Aisha used to free slaves. She used to have her own money. The wives of the Prophet Sauda, all of them were, had their whatever, the Messenger of Allah gave him, or whatever they had. And I'm gonna, I quoted from you last time, contemporary scholars and women, such as Farhat Hashmi and Ingrid Madison and many others. I'm going to talk to you right after the Prophet scholars who were successful, who brought contribution to this deen, okay? It's not from me. This is from the Al-Mawrib course that I told you. This is found in all the book of Sirah. This is called Torchbearers, Scholars of Islam. And number one was Hafsa bin Sirin, okay? Then it was Darda as-Sughra. Then it was Fatima bin Abdul Malik. Then it was Fatima as-Samarqayna. Then it was Amra bin Abdurrahman. Then it was Zubaydah bin Jafar, and many others. Okay, scholars. You're talking about, we know hadith today. We know all these amazing ethics and morals, and how the Prophet was, and so on and so forth. Not to steal, not to lie, not to cheat, not to take things out of context, and to confuse people, and so on and so forth. We know these things from these women. Women were the scholars of major hadith, men scholars. So again, your statement is, that question is a fallacy. No women were left unveiled. I mean, if the veil is something wrong, just look around you. SubhanAllah. Who has more dignity, a Muslim woman or a non-Muslim woman who shows her stuff to everyone? A Muslim woman who only shows it for her husband. So going back to marriage, right? People scream, what kind of marriage is in Islam? Oh my God, this is not fair. Yet they go and they undress men. SubhanAllah, they wear bikini on the beach so everyone can see. I just came from Romania 2 weeks ago. Just watching the news, they were showing at the Black Sea, people are naked, man. But so husband, wife, they do. I mean, SubhanAllah, and then they claim that they're amazing in ethics and morals and so on and so forth, and they point fingers. People really cover themselves, and this is dignity. You're talking about this is a universal dignity. To cover yourself. So women who are in hijab and who veil themselves, as you say, after Prophet Muhammad, this was a revolutionary change in the respect of women and the dignity of women that a woman really deserves, okay? Not in strip clubs, not in fashion shows showing, and being anorexic and so on and so forth, but for her husband. Again, that's a holistic marriage. That is a holy marriage right there, the marriage of Islam. So let's keep moving on. So that is the issue of women scholars and women not being successful in knowing mind. This is such a misconception and a fallacy. Islam did free women. It did bring. How come so many women become Muslim? The thing they want to be taken, the rights to be taken away. So again, you talked about. I suggest try living in Saudi Arabia, Iran, or Kuwait, or Afghanistan. I know people live there. I know people come from there. I know people who, I've been to Saudi Arabia, and it's not as you say. And again, we have to look at what the book teaches, not the, okay, let's look at these people and this people, and therefore Islam, says that. Just look at what happens, as I said, a list of, watch the news, and a list of things that happen from, pedophiles, and who are supposed to be the best of people. They're the priests and so on and so forth. I don't accuse the Catholic Church for that. I accuse those people. To people burning houses just right here in Detroit across the river and killing each other and shooting each other from 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock. I don't know how many murders for whatever reason, and adultery and fornication and kids being born out of wedlock. What is that? Where is the marriage? How many people? 52% divorce rate in North America and so on and so forth. Let the numbers speak for themselves, right? So Islamic concept of marriage is high above, is divine. It's not even holistic or holy as you call it. It's divine. Then you talk about the no compulsion in religion, right? You cannot force someone to be Muslim. You cannot. It's impossible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that over and over and over in the Quran. La ikraha fi din. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. You can tell the difference between what's right and wrong. Okay, in the Prophet, if we look and we analyze the issue of apostasy, I mean, this I talked about before, right? The Prophet says, is recorded in Hadith Nawawi, the 40 Hadith, right? That the blood of a Muslim is only halal in the Nigeri's case, and the case someone leaves his religion and goes against the community, fights against them. Okay, so their scholars have discussed this. There's difference of opinion on that. Yes, there is, certain things, and because it's called treason. Okay, there's no separation in state between state and religion, especially when you leave Islam and you go and you sell out to other people, right? So in the United States, the punishment for treason is death. It's been in many countries, right? So I mean, why put Islam under the scrutiny only and say, oh, look what it says, what a intolerant religion. It's the most tolerant religion, right? People just say you can just say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. No one will kill you. You can hide it. You can be a hypocrite. Hide it in your heart. No one's gonna kill you if you just speak it, right? That's why in the Prophet, when one of the Sahabas came, and this is, pay attention to this. Okay, he was on the battlefield. This is not a joke. This is to deal with apostasy and so on and so forth, and killing Muslim, and someone would just say I'm Muslim or whatever. He came and he was fighting with him, and he was about to strike him. The person says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and the Sahaba still stroke him and kill him. He went and told the Prophet. The Prophet was so upset, and the guy said, well, he was faking it, he just wanted to get away. He said, how are you going to take care of that on Day of Judgment? How are you going to stand against La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? So important. Okay, so it's the people who fight against Islam, the people who try to confuse and try to commit treason, because there's no separation between Islam and state as it is here. People, for them, religion is just a personal choice. Whatever, it's not a big deal. There's no such thing as right or wrong. Do whatever you want. Whoever cares, do whatever. They don't have a concept of truth and falsehood. Their ethics and morals change. Someone leaves Islam, they go and start talking bad things and corrupting people, and there's so much corruption, even murder and stuff happens. People start writing things, start reciting poetry against Islam and so on and so forth, as they did at the time of Prophet ﷺ, right? And soldiers get pumped up, they go and kill some Muslims and so on and so forth. They say, oh look, these people know better. Oh yeah, these Muslims are criminal because this ex-Muslim says so, in TV shows and so on and so forth. Oh, I don't feel bad about killing a few of them. As the soldier was saying in one of the videos, anyone with a scarf on their head or with a towel on their head or whatever he said, is fair game, right? I can shoot him. So I mean, this is something that I'll leave to scholars to discuss. I don't have, there's no problem. And Islam is the most tolerant religion that ever exists. History of bloodshed and something like this, everyone has a history of bloodshed. This is humanity from the beginning. Okay, so I mean, this is not even, I'm not even gonna go into this. People know about it. Go look at documentaries and study and see who's the real bloodshedders, and because the Quran says, fight those who fight you, but if they incline to peace, you incline to peace. It doesn't say go and kill whoever you want. Okay, fight those who fight you from the Quran. Surah Tawbah, many other surahs which talk about the fighting and restrictions. SubhanAllah. Islam is the only religion where you can go to hell. Okay, you can go to hell and be sinful for retaliation. So basically, someone came and killed your people, and you fight against them with fair only. And if you don't fight properly as Allah has ordained you and He set up the rules, you can be guilty of sin. SubhanAllah, how fair is that? I mean, someone came, killed your family out of your anger. I mean, this is just normal. Out of your anger, if you go and do more than they did to you, you can be responsible for this. Because Allah says, do not transgress the boundaries. Do not transgress the limits. And of course, then He says, but if you forgive, it's better for you. It means, Allah subhanahu understands is that you can take retaliation. You have it, and this is justice, right? But ihsan, perfection above justice, is that you give someone the right more than you take, the justice. And if you do decide to overlook someone's mistakes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you even more for your patience. What a beautiful religion, Allah Akbar. We talked about the marriage. And I like what one of the brothers says. You keep saying I believe, I'll tell you mine, I believe. I speak right now with the authority, may Allah forgive me, of the Quran, and I'm not doing that justice because again, I'm not a scholar. I'm doing my best here. This Quran, as I said, this is the word of Allah. Allah says it. Allah says He preserved it. We'll talk about this in a second. He over and over, no book No book in this world which claims supposedly scriptures has this, that over and over says that we preserve it. I will take care of it. No false will approach. This is book. There's no doubt. If you're in doubt about it, then procure something like challenging people over and over in 1400 years, and I can go and show you attempts of people, and no one ever, with the most acknowledging, this is the Quran, and we'll talk about it towards your question about that. So you keep talking about God, God, I believe, I believe, I believe. Again, what authority do you speak on except as yourself? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, have you not seen that person who takes as God his own self, his own soul, his own nafs? So a godly marriage, a proper holy marriage is the marriage of Islam. Okay, between a woman and a man. Okay, I'm married, I have one wife. Okay, it doesn't say go and marry for sexual this. Okay, a woman and a man. But the fourth wife issue, circumstances sometimes may dictate this to happen. A woman might be sick, not have children, cannot have sex for that reason or whatever. A husband might go and start looking for things outside of marriage. There's no commitment. There's no more lineage. You don't know where the kids are coming from other women. Okay, so that's why these things are sanctioned. Yes, go and seek proper marriage sanctioned by God, and you can do that. So, you know, the wisdom is amazing, subhanAllah. Anyone who has, who can ponder would really understand this, inshallah. Okay, keep going on. It talks about, you know, here Muhammad shows that marriage to him was first and foremost fulfilling one's sexual desires as opposed to a whole union. I just told you what the Quran said. Let me read it again. Surah 30, which is Surah Rum. Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and of his signs he created from yourselves made, that you may find tranquility in them, and he placed between you affection and mercy. Indeed, these are signs for people who give thought. Mercy, affection, tranquility, that is the essence of a holy union. Love, he says, wadda. Subhanallah. So again, we have to get and understand the whole thing, and now understand the hadith within its proper context. They're coming from battle. These people love their wives. They haven't had intercourse with them, haven't been with them, hadn't had sex with them for a long time. They've been in battle. Okay? This guy's hurrying up to his wife to see her, to hug her, to love her, and yes, of course, to sleep with her. What's wrong with that? You sleep with your wife. People sleep with their wives, right? What's wrong with that? This is what marriage is about, you know, parts of it, right? So he runs fast, and the Prophet stops and says, what makes you in such a hurry? He says, I'm newly married. He loves his wife. He wants to be with her. He says, did you marry a virgin or a non-virgin? He says, a non-virgin. He said, why don't you marry a young girl so that you may play with her and she may play with you, right? He basically says, and try to understand this from the proper context, okay? Basically he says, if you marry a virgin, it would have been better for you, right? Because, for example, if a woman was married before, she already had a man, maybe that man was better, for example, at performing than this new man, so she might not be as pleased with him, you know, and that might affect their marriage. Okay, so he didn't say don't marry, but it says it's better if you can marry a virgin, right? Anyone would, you know, who's going into marriage and is newly married, right, is good to marry. Islam encourages, right, women and men to be virgins when they go into marriage. So he said, why don't you marry a younger girl, a virgin, that you could have played with her and she could have played with you, right? To be together. I mean, that's what you do, right? So just because he's teaching them, man, when you teach someone sexual education, you know, mind you, today in grade 5 and 6 in our schools, you know, mixing girls and boys and showing them videos and stuff, you know, right? So how come there's no shame in that? So when you teach them, do you say that, oh, these teachers are so perverted that they teach, you know, our kids about sexual education and so on and so forth? The Prophet ﷺ was a teacher. He said, I was sent as a teacher. He was teaching them from everything to everything, even how and what to do about sexual intercourse, right? Don't do it from, you know, in you know, excuse my language, in the butt, as some people do it today, you know. That's perversion. He was teaching them. He told them, you cannot do that. You enter the women from the proper place that God created for them, from where they can procreate, not from, you know, where bad things come out. So he was teaching him. He was a teacher. He was not perverted. He was not a pervert. And if you actually look at the other hadiths that talk about this, right? He says, why didn't you marry? He says, O Messenger of Allah, he says, that I think, in I hope I'm not, it refers to the same hadith, that he had sisters who were younger than him, and their parents passed away, so he wanted to marry an older woman who would take care of his sisters. Right? So if we quote again the hadith, that will go in parallel with this, because sometimes the hadith will give a full detail, and sometimes another place narrated by in a longer detail, right? Based on how the narrations were heard. So again, a very genuine intention. Then he says, wait so that you may enter Medina at night, so that the lady of unkept hair may comb her hair, and the one whose husband has been absent may shave her pubic region. Obviously, what is he saying? He's saying that, hey man, your wife, give her some time, let her know that we're coming, so that she prepares herself for you. She hasn't seen for you a long time. Obviously, she'll put some nice clothes on, put some perfume, clean herself up, right? Part of Islamic cleanliness is that you shave your pubic hair, that you shave your underarms, and you keep clean all the time. Part of Islamic cleanliness is when you go to the washroom, you don't wipe with the toilet paper and that's it, and you don't wash your hands, astaghfirullah. I used to work in a gym and people I used to clean the washrooms, I'm not ashamed to say it. People would walk out, 8 out of 10 and not even wash their hands. Islam says when you do number one, number two, you have the little lotta, whatever it's called, with water, and you clean yourself with water. Okay, you clean yourself whatever you can, tahir, whether it's this or that, whatever at that time the Prophet, whatever they had, they used to clean themselves with. You don't just whatever, you and then you walk out and don't even wash yourself, right? After you use the washroom, you make wudu again, okay, to be on wudu all the time, which is purification. Wash your hands, face, arms up, your feet, everything. Cleanliness. He's teaching him cleanliness. This is part of Islam. She's not doing that because he's pervert or something like that, right? You should comb your hair. Should be nice, clean, okay? So we have to be, again, our projections, into what is in our mind. We always see pervert, when it's so genuine and so, amazing what he was teaching. So, he says, then you said, a man would only ask another man a question such as the one Muhammad asked Jabir ibn Abdullah if the man was sexually perverse, emphasizing pleasure with young women, whether for himself or others, fervently. It's just crazy. I mean, stuff. I'm sorry. You see how just the questions, they challenge me to kind of step out of my boundary, be a bit more strong. So I wanted to, take it easy. But it doesn't show sexual perversity. It showed that he was teaching him. He didn't say, oh, how do you do it? Oh, do you do this? Because the Prophet said, the woman or the man who will talk about what happens in the bedroom will be cursed. So today you go to work, and your friends and so on and so forth, and say, oh yeah, I did my wife so bad last night, or I did this, or I did this girl, I did her this way, and we did this and that, and they describe everything in front of all the workers, and everyone knows about everyone's sexual life at home. If they have problems, if the husband is impotent, or the woman's this or that, everyone knows. And this creates problems in society, big time problems. In the Prophet said that you be cursed by Allah, the person who go out of and take the secrets of the bedroom outside, cursed. Okay. However, when these people are asking anytime the Prophet said anything about this, okay, we're asking for knowledge and to learn, because the Prophet was a teacher. He was teaching even about their sexual life, because some Sahabas came and he told them, the Prophet said, you will have rewards from Allah having sex with your wife. And they said, what? Reward for having sex? He said, and this is rational, he said, wouldn't you be punished if you be having sex, zina, outside of the marriage? They said, yeah. So therefore, if you do it lawfully, Allah will reward you. A good action, a lawful action that is sanctioned by Allah will give you reward. A bad action that is not sanctioned by Allah will give you a sin. Okay? So I mean, look at the fairness of that, subhanAllah. I hope you understand that. And then you quote another thing which is totally from the wrong place, and put it there and says, look at this. Narrated Hisham's father, the women would present themselves to the Prophet, and Aisha said, doesn't a lady feel ashamed for presenting herself to a man? But when the verse came, O Muhammad, you may postpone the turn of any of them, your wives, that you may please. This is Surah 33:51. Was revealed. Aisha said, O Allah's apostle, I do not see but that your Lord hurries in pleasing you. So Aisha was being a bit, how would I say, she was kind of, trying to upset the Prophet, right? But let's put the verses in context. Surah 33, verse 51. And this is Surah, I think, Ashab. Okay, so in this surah, okay, starting from verse 50, The Prophet ﷺ is given what lawful women are for him and him alone. He was the only one who was allowed to go over 4 women. Okay, not for sexual gratification. Because if you look at the wives that he married, Sauda and so many other ones, were older. Okay, they were to strengthen tribes ties and so on and so forth. Not by his will, because he was with Khadija first for 20 years. He could have, in his prime, when he had all the power, he could have married all the women he wanted, right? Especially after he married Khadija and he had the money and so on and so forth. And he was from the best tribe. He could have picked whatever, and only virgin. And even as a prophet, he could have picked. Think about this. He could have picked, as you said, if he was advising the person to marry a virgin, he could have picked virgin. Yet the only virgins he married was Aisha. The only virgin that he married was Aisha. So he could have picked only virgins if he wanted sexual, right? That's what he means by giving that advice to the hadith before that I talked about. But all these marriages were meant for certain issues. Some were divinely inspired to abolish some of the practices by him practicing this, the proper event. So verse 50 talks, O Prophet, indeed we have made lawful for you your wives whom you have given their due compensation, and from your right hand possessed, with Allah permitted for you, and the daughters of your paternal uncles, and daughters of your paternal aunts, and the daughters of your maternal uncles, daughters of your maternal aunts, who emigrated with you, and any believing women, if she gives herself to the Prophet, and the Prophet wishes to marry her, only for you, excluding the other believers, says, we certainly know what we have made upon obligatory upon them concerning their wives, and whom the right hand possess, in order that there will be upon you no discomfort, and Allah is ever forgiving, merciful. This is only for the Prophet ﷺ. Also for him, there was other things. He used to fast day and night, sometimes not breaking the fast for 2 days. And when the companions wanted to do that, they were not allowed to do that. Qiyam, praying at night, something that, subhanAllah, how many people do that? Wake up at night, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, pray at night. That was mandatory on the Prophet ﷺ. Many things were mandatory and he had to do them, and they're not mandatory upon us. Okay, so there's exceptions that he himself received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And look at that, the more women you have, it's harder to keep, with them. It's hard to be fair. So it's not a pleasure and a leisure for the Prophet speaking about, especially for the wives that he had, some of them were older and so on and so forth. So it's not just out of pleasure. Okay, there are certain aspects, and you can look and research and talk to scholars about who have history, backgrounds, and tell you about all the marriages that he did, and how strengthened tribe types, how it freed slaves based on that, and so on and so forth. Many wisdoms and benefits from that. So the next verse says, and you may put aside whom you will of them, and take care of them who you will. So for example, he was exempted from observing every night, going to the same wife, to all the wives, or making him being equal in time frames with them. He was exempted. Why? Number one, because it was very hard for him. Okay, he was either in campaigns, out in jihad, in giving dawah, in working for people, building mosques. He himself was carrying rocks with his hands. He was always busy. Okay, he was not just I sit at home, get my wives around, this and that. Okay, it's very hard for him. He was always with it was in his heart. He was trying as hard as he can, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this exemption, okay, to make it easy for him, says, to be no hardship on you. And then what it says though, there's no blame upon you, says, if you return to them, right? So you can put aside some of them, take them, then you can go to the other ones, right? You can suspend some of them, say, I'm not going to be with you, and I'm going to be with this one, or this one, okay? And it says that is more suitable, that they should be content and not grief, and that they should be satisfied with what you have given them, all of them. All of them. What does this mean? And all the commentaries of Tafsir said, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed in this, okay, it said that they should be content. Okay, how can they be content if you would leave them? Because the Prophet, even though Allah allowed him this thing, if you look throughout the seerah and throughout all the times, he never did that. Still, as I said, that you showed, even when he was sick, he was still asking for their permission. Why? So they know that Allah allowed them, but still, out of his amazing character, his amazing way of dealing with them, his justice, he still acted justly to them, and he still dedicated his time and spread it out accordingly. SubhanAllah. So you know, and he says, I agree with Aisha, it does seem that Allah is in pleasing Muhammad, you know, and what a, you know, and this is a bad statement. And Aisha also used to say, when she was met with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course she was jealous in this case, she used to say, she used to call not the Lord of Muhammad, she used to say the Lord of Ibrahim, or the Lord of Musa, or so on and so. And when she was pleased with him, she used to say, you know, the Lord of Muhammad, as to Allah. And he would notice that, right, that he would know she's mad with him if she wouldn't say the Lord of Muhammad. She would say the Lord of Ibrahim, or the Lord of Musa, or so on and so forth. So she was, you know, sometimes a bit, you know, rude to the Prophet out of jealousy and so on. This is only natural. So let's move on. You talked about slaves and sexual slaves in heaven. There's no such thing as sexual slaves in heaven. Give me the Quranic definition of a sexual slave. There's no such thing. There's no sexual slaves. There's not even the word slave in Islam. Okay, slave is only in terms of an abd, as a relationship of faith or worship from the slave to Allah, to his Lord. I'm Abdullah, I'm the slave of Allah. In that case only. The ones that you're talking about is malakat aymanukum, right? The one who your right hand possesses. It's not even slave, because slave has such a bad connotation. Okay, and abd is actually a willing slave, because you willingly give yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Excuse my phone in the background. So you talked about Hur al-Ain, basically, right? The maidens of heaven, actually, right? And if we go to you say there's no spirituality in heaven, what is this? And there's wine, you know, God would not just give women to men as a reward in heaven. I find this perverted, tempting to gain followers, kidnapping, children by offering candy. This is, I guess, he says you humbly disagree with it. Okay, basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah 75, verse 22 to 23, but we are informed in the Quran, okay, it says, in the Quran it says in that surah, faces that they will be radiant, blazing, and looking at their Lord, subhanallah. So the best thing in paradise is seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're going to see Allah, and they say peace, a word from the merciful Lord, in Surah 36:58 will be heard. Believers will sit on honor, seats of honor, in presence of an all-powerful King, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Surah 54, verse 55. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put people in paradise. It said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah's good pleasure is even greater, the reward of paradise, that is the great victory. Being with the believers in paradise, being with the Prophet enjoying peace, as it says salam, gardens underneath which rivers flow. The Prophet said, no ear has ever heard what will happen in paradise, no eyes has ever seen what happened in paradise, only good blessings. So there's spirituality. You're going to be with God, you're going to see God for the people who deserve it. It's not, sexual this and sexual. Yes, there will be sex in paradise. Of course, if there's sex here, there's going to be, reward there. The people who abstained here and they did it the proper way will have the reward of that in paradise. What's wrong with that? You didn't disprove whatsoever. All you're saying is you don't agree with this, right? Look at the Bible talks about, the New Testament, the saying of Jesus talking about, the kingdom of heaven is like the men, the bride, and the virgins that come is the groom and the brides that come, the virgins, and they're not just one, there's like a few of them. So these things will happen. There's nothing wrong. Man, it says they're spouses. Okay, Allah will prepare spouses for you upon them, and they're not gonna be sex slaves. They're not gonna be prostitutes. They're gonna be their spouses. Okay, the Hur al-Ain they're gonna be their wives in heaven. So what's wrong? You can't have sex with your wife. This is what Allah will allow. They will be their wives, and allow people have their pleasure of looking at their Lord, to having pleasure of hearing the peace greetings from the angels and so on and so forth, from the righteous people, being with the Prophet ﷺ. There will be no jealousy there. People will not defecate or puke or something, so do not be tired. And with regards to the wine, it says that there will be, number one, there will be no idle talk, there will be no lying there, recompense from your Lord, a commensurable gift. And also, when it talks about the wine, and I want to make another reference, sorry, Surah 4, verse 57, as to those who believe and do good works, we shall make them enter gardens which rivers flow, to abide therein forever. Therein they shall have spouses, pure spouses, azwaj mutahara. Azwaj in Arabic, it means a spouse, a wife. And we shall admit them to a place of plenteous shade. As opposed to wine, in Bukhari, Surah 37, verse 43-47, it says, it talks about gardens of felicity, facing each other on thrones, and then it talks about a taste of a delicious drink, a wine free from headiness, nor will they suffer intoxication therefrom. This is Surah 37, verse 43 to verse 47, talking about the wine. It's not wine with alcohol where you get drunk and you puke like in this. I want to ask, the people who are asking these questions, do you drink? Are you drinking wine? Are you drinking alcohol here and there? Do you get drunk? Do you like to take a buzz here and there? Sometimes you wake up with a, with a hangover in the morning. People here, you go, in our nice society, alcohol everywhere. People puke. People, get intoxicated. They get drunk. They get fat from it. Right? The reward of this, wine and this drink in paradise, it says no intoxication. Surah 56, right after the surah that you quoted, verse 17 to 19. Round about them, they'll serve youth. They'll have very beautiful youth who will be their servants, with beakers and cups filled with clear flowing fountains, which is that wine. No after ache will they receive therein from